Welcome back. I have a question for all of you. When was the last time you checked in on your own mental health? What about a close friends or loved ones? Well, mental health is an important part of our overall health. And with that being said, suicide is the leading cause of death in the United States. Did you know that? So that means it's important to stay on top of it. And today, Dr. Jeremy Wigington, Medical Director for Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana, is here to talk about suicide prevention and how your primary care doctor can help monitor your own mental health. Dr. Jeremy, welcome back.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on to talk about this really powerful topic, because I did not know that September is actually National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. First, let's talk a little bit more about how common suicide is.
Suicide is actually one of the most common causes of preventable death in the United States.
Wow.
So it's actually a pretty common reason that people may die. So it's definitely something that we want to be aware of. We want to know how to prevent it. We want to know how to recognize somebody who may be at risk for it. And with of course with COVID-19, and we've been somewhat isolated, we've seen rising mental health issues over the past 2 decades. Suicide deaths have actually risen about 30%.
Wow.
So that's a significant raise in the rates of suicide in the last 2 decades, and a good portion of that happened that we know happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a difficult topic to talk about, but it's such an important topic that we talk about, so I'm glad we're doing that this morning. You know, suicide is preventable, right? And I feel like one way to prevent suicide is to know some of the common risk factors. What can you tell us about some of those common risk factors?
Of course, that's a great question. Well, being able to know what the risk factors are and then recognize them in other people to know they may be at risk. But it's actually those, there's some populations that have been identified as being at high risk for suicide, those including veterans, those in the LGBTQ community, very young people, especially young LGBTQ folks. And those with serious life-changing events, those who have gone through divorce or anything major like that, financial issues. So there's some very specific populations that have been at higher risk. And the reason for that is probably somewhat multifaceted, multifactorial. But if you think about it, those folks who have been deployed have likely gone through very difficult life events. The LGBTQ community, of course, have daily struggles, and they often have personal issues, sometimes family issues. So those kind of stressful events tends to always link back to some kind of stress.
Yeah.
So definitely puts you at high risk if you're in those groups.
And and if you find yourself feeling some type of way, like some of the risk factors that Dr. Jeremy just mentioned, there are ways to get help. One way is through your healthcare provider. How can they help?
The best thing to do is make it part of your every visit conversation. So just like you go to check on your blood pressure, your weight, all of that stuff, make your mental health part of that regular conversation with your regular healthcare provider every single time. Let them know how you're doing. Even if they don't ask, you talk about it. So being able to think about whether you're struggling to get through your daily task, if you're feeling anxiety, stress, depression, recognize other things you may not even have thought about. Like, have you stopped enjoying things you normally always do? Let's say you've knitted for years and all of a sudden you just don't find that enjoyable anymore. You don't enjoy hanging out with people. You're having trouble making and keeping friends all of a sudden. Those could definitely be signs that you want to talk to somebody about. And the absolute best place to start is with your regular provider who knows your history, who may know your family history, kind of more of your personal information as well. So always start there to get that conversation started if you can.
And it's so interesting to me because one example I always think about when we're talking about this topic is that beauty queen. She was always so happy and excited. She won a crown, she was on Extra, but then she ends up committing suicide. So how do we talk to a family member or a loved one, a spouse, anybody really, if we see that they're going through some of those things?
Sure. Number one, don't make assumptions. Just because someone seems positive and outgoing, we've seen people on TV like Robin Williams who, was very positive, seemed outgoing, very happy, but you never know what's going on in the background. So the easiest thing to do is ask. Ask how your friends are doing. Ask how your family is doing. Sit down with them. Check on them, especially if you haven't seen them in a while. If you have loved ones, you know they live alone, you know they're isolated. Just call and ask. You don't have to be a mental health expert to just ask someone how they're feeling.
That's so true. And know your resources as well, because there's a hotline that people can call as well if they feel like they're feeling like some of these signs. Tell us a little bit more about that hotline.
That's right. There is a suicide prevention lifeline. It's 988. It's a very simple, it's just like 911, but it's 988. It's for 988 for your mental health crises or emergencies. It's 24/7. It's free. It's confidential. Multiple languages are offered, including English and Spanish. Even those with hearing issues. And if you go to the website, they can give you some more options for even live chat and texting options if you want to talk about that. But just if you can just remember 988, that is the place to call to get urgent help if you need something, you know, apart from your regular visits.
So important that we're talking about this. More of the story, check in on yourselves, everybody. Check in with your families and loved ones as well. Thank you, Dr. Jeremy, for joining us this morning. And don't forget, everybody, that National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline number is 988. You can also go to 988lifeline.org. And for more information about mental health, you can, of course, talk to BCBSLA. Head over to their website, bcbsla.com, or follow Blue Cross and Blue Shield on social media at BCBSLA. All right, stay right there, everybody. We'll be right back.